And it's wonderful to be able to stand here today and say that we've got a coalition policy which is all about energy affordability and doing the responsible thing when it comes to emissions reduction. And can I say to the Australian people, every time you hear the Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and the Energy Minister Chris Bowen attacking us, you should know they're doing that not being focused on doing the right thing by you, and that is bringing your energy prices down. Every time they attack us, you should know they're doing it because they don't have an answer when it comes to energy affordability and reducing emissions. You should know they're doing that because the $275 they promised you at the end of this year in the reduction in your power bills isn't going to happen. And remember, they promised you that on over 90 occasions. They also promised that they were going to bring emissions down as well, yet emissions are flatlining. So we now have a plan which is all about affordable energy. It's all about doing the responsible thing when it comes to emissions reduction. And we're looking forward to getting out and selling our plan because there is now a very, very clear contrast when it comes to this debate. You have a coalition which is all about energy affordability while doing the responsible thing, paying our fair share, versus a government which cannot meet its commitments when it comes to energy prices. As a matter of fact, they've gone up by nearly 40%, and there is no sign that that is going to change. So there is now a clear contrast, and I look forward to getting out on the road and selling our coalition policy.
Questions?
Opposition Leader, some of your moderate colleagues have already raised concerns about coal being underwritten by the taxpayers in the capacity investment scheme. Given you've already done net zero, are you worried that this sends the wrong message to suburban voters you're trying to win back?
Just a little while ago, the joint coalition party room, which includes members of my party and members of David's party, signed off on the affordable plan that I've talked about today and that we'll continue to talk about over the coming weeks. It is all about affordability when it comes to energy prices and playing our part responsibly with emissions reductions. I'll ask Dan to address the particular detail that you mentioned.
So we've said all along that we will take a technology-neutral approach, and that has been clear from day one. That is what the Shadow Ministry decided last Thursday. It's obviously what the National Party have decided, and so we are taking a technology-neutral approach, and that is what we will continue to do.
How will this policy drive down power bills? And are you willing to put a number or a figure on how much people can expect them to go down by?
Downward pressure is so important. All we're seeing from Labor is upward pressure and upward momentum. This is terrible for Australian families. This is just terrible going into summer when mums are saying, how can I put the cooler on? What am I going to do when this electricity bill comes? How am I going to pay it? What if somebody has to step back from their job for whatever reason? You know, this is really tough. We have to see downward pressure on electricity prices. Now, when you get more supply into the system, you get more supply brings more pressure going down on prices. And what we're not seeing from the government is the supply of gas, peaking power, baseload power, to balance the huge amount of renewables that are in the system. And we're not anti-renewables, but they have to be in the right place and they have to be balanced by baseload power. And we have to have a government that, look back 4 years, they demonised gas. They didn't want anything to do with it. The Energy Minister sort of washed his hands of gas in our system. Reluctantly, they've had to come back to gas because they know that it's vital. Meanwhile, they've got an environmental approval system that refuses to unlock the very gas that Australians need to bring down their power prices and make energy affordable again. By giving the national electricity market the objective of affordable power, we know that the investments we make and the rules that we set will be all about bringing energy prices down.
Exactly, and this is a practical way of changing the mandate of AEMO, that now their first mandate is to source energy predicated on the 2030-35 targets. That means that we have latent supply of base load sitting there that we need to increase the supply of and actually drive down those prices by the simple principle of demand and supply. And when we talk about the capacity investment scheme, taking a technology agnostic approach to that, when you look in my home state of Queensland, they intend to sweat out their coal-fired power stations. What you do by expanding it, you actually put that downward pressure of putting it right across all sources of energy. And what it also does is it buys the time for us to transition into particularly things like nuclear energy, to be able to have an energy mix, not put all your energy eggs in one basket. This government is going to get to 92% renewables. There is no country of the industrial scale the size of Australia that has done that. There's a couple that had a crack, Portugal and Spain, and they lost their grid for over a week and a half because you need baseload power. So these are practical steps that we're taking that builds in the capacity of us having a cogent plan moving forward of transition with nuclear, but we should have a balance. And we're not against renewables, but we should have the right balance. And our plan at the last election was around 38% nuclear, around 54% were renewables, and the balance was gas and snowy hydro. That is a common sense solution.
Totally, David. And consumers instinctively know that when energy is unaffordable, everything is unaffordable.
Do you have a timeline at all as to when consumers can see downward pressure under your plan?
Well, they need to see downward pressure, and by changing the rules of how energy operates, the priorities that the various structures operate under, and the underwriting where necessary in a modest way to bring that baseload power forward, we know that we will start to put downward pressure on supply. It's 2.5 years to the election, can't come soon enough for Australian households that are really struggling under this government's energy policy. Our priority will be to make energy affordable, add supply into the system, be really upfront. We have a Prime Minister who can't look Australians in the eye and be honest about the cost of his long-term targets and the effect that that is now having on electricity prices and reliability, and the fact that a massive renewables-only grid is causing huge problems to baseload power, particularly as we go into the uncertain months ahead.
So just to reiterate, does your plan have any timeline at all as to when consumers can start seeing downward pressure?
Consumers can be absolutely confident that once we have charge of energy policy in this country, we will start to change the rules as soon as possible. That means we have to get into government. That means we have to change rules around the supply of gas and the operating rules of the energy system. And we can see from that point on how downward pressure will be placed on energy prices.
Here's the challenge for Labor. Why don't they expand the CIS to take in all the technology that's being driven in today? Why don't they change the mandate of AEMO? And the challenge for them is they're in government. They are the government. They are the ones responsible for the fact that you didn't get your $275 reduction this year in your energy bill that they promised you. In fact, it's gone up by over $800. And the reality is they have the levers to pull, but they are letting ideology get in the road of the pain that Australians are feeling. There is Australians tonight that won't be able to put dinner on the table because they can't afford it, because they can't afford their energy bills. And some of them don't have job security at all. So why wouldn't you, as Prime Minister of this country, pull any lever you possibly can to give Australians some hope? It is a disgrace that there would be people tonight that can't put dinner on their table in a country as rich as Australia.
Why wouldn't you, as Prime Minister, prioritise affordable energy instead of the ideology of an 82% renewable grid by 2030, which everyone acknowledges cannot be reached? But if you set that and you make everyone pay for it, the cost is actually skyrocketing. So it's fundamentally completely around the wrong way when it comes to looking after Australians who deserve a government that backs them in and understands that affordable power is the number one consideration for citizens.
If the coalition wins the next election, will you submit revised 2030 and 2035 emissions reduction targets to the United Nations?
We've already said that we won't make any comments about targets from opposition and that we will look at our NDCs, our short-term targets, once in government. But we will look at our own domestic energy policy as a primary consideration, as every other country does and as every other country should.
Just on the time frame for seeing lower power prices, you must have a target though, a marker of success if you win government of when people can expect to see that. Why should people vote for you if you can't provide more information, some concrete figures or more of a plan than what's in there?
Because they'll have a look at our plan and they'll see that it will work. Because it But because they'll know that immediately it starts to put downward pressure on prices by being technology agnostic about baseload power, injecting more gas supply into the system, opening up gas fields in Australia so we have Australian gas for Australians in terms of a domestic reservation scheme. And they know that that will bring downward pressure on prices.
Mr Littleproud, do you think a net zero future would be a welcome outcome?
Well, let me make this clear. The National Party believes in reducing emissions. It's a core principle that we got to in our determination. What we want to do is do that in a responsible way, a fair way, that Australia does its fair share, but we don't streak ahead causing the pain that we've got at the moment. Now, I think it'd be unwise for anyone to comment about what comes in the future, particularly in technology. The technology, whether it be carbon capture storage, we're balanced in terms of nuclear, the whole facet of where our economy is going can be balanced. And one day it would be a great achievement. But what we're in trouble for at the moment is we've set these targets so far out that we've lost an energy grid, and we've now got a whole lot of other industries like transport where effectively you're going to pay for a combustion engine, a tax. When you talk about mandatory reporting, they're doing Scope 3 reporting. That's $1.2 billion in the first year for what no one else in the world is doing. In fact, even Joe Biden had the brains not to go anywhere near Scope 3 emissions. So this is where, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to afford to have any reduction in emissions if we send our country broke. So the debate is not about whether we want to reduce emissions. It's about how and how much it's going to cost. I think that's a mature conversation. That's leadership that the National Party and the Liberal Party got to say that there is a cheaper, better, fairer way.
Last question, guys. How would your policies actually reduce emissions?
Emissions?
We've said we will reduce emissions. On average,
But how?
can I just finish? On average, year on year, in line with comparable countries and as fast and as far as technology will allow. So that is our policy, and coming from that, breakthrough technologies, realigning the CEFC and ARENA, which now invest or underwrite taxpayers' money in wind and solar, which don't need their help, but we would repurpose so that they would look at these breakthrough technologies, and in 25 years' time, there will be technologies that we're not talking about today. Meanwhile, we know that carbon capture and storage has come a long way. We know that blue hydrogen has come a long way. For our agricultural sector, something very familiar for David and I, soil carbon does many things, including make our soils healthier for our own vegetation and farming activities, but sequesters carbon. So there are a range of activities that we can use and employ, and that I know is starting to happen. I think that was the last question, guys. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, there you have it. The Coalition's climate plan. Opposition leader Susan Lee and Nationals leader David Littleproud speaking after both parties formally discussed their stance on climate.